Hey everyone, welcome to Coding Simplified, and today we'll see a very important topic in Java. So basically we'll see that how we can compare the two objects. Now if you see in Java mainly we have two types of thing. One type is a primitive and one type is object. Primitive means that if you are talking about the int, long, short, float, double, so these all are the primitive type. Now whenever I want to compare any primitive type, so what we do? So we can compare via this one. Like if you see this case, this is a basic check that whether these two values are equal or not. Like here I have directly check, you can take variable int a or int b and then you can check a equals to b. So whenever you want to compare the primitive type, you can always compare using this one equals to and then it will compare that here you have value, because the point is that these all are the values. So based on this value I can compare that which is greater and which is smaller. But the point is that if there are objects, now on which value and how you should compare the thing, that you need to figure out. Like let's say if we have an employee object here, now employee can have name, employee can have age, they can have salary and other variables as well. Now how we are comparing that, how they should be equal. So it depends on our implementation, that what we are defining or what parameters are equal for a particular object. So basically we can say okay, that let's say if their name is equal, then they are equal, or if their name is equal, then they are equal, or if their name, age and salary both are equal, then it is equal object, right? So this is why it is very important that how we can compare the two objects, whether they are equal or not. So that we will see today. Now if you see that by default if you want to check the equality of an object, so we have this function in Java where you basically provide the first object and then you check dot equal second object. So now by default what happens, that if you don't override this equals, so by default it's just check the references, that whether they are referring to same objects or not, and according to that it gives your solution. So now if you see this case, in this case what happens, that here I have the employee E1 equals to name employee Sachin 45, and so let me show you the employee thing. So what is this? This is basically a simple class, and here we have the age, salary and name. We have three variable here. Now this is a constructor, so whenever I'm creating any object of the employee, so these three values got initialized, they are initialized, right? So now this is how I'm saying that this is my name, this is the age and this is the salary I have. So now I have created the three employee object here, E1, E2, E3. Now let's say if I want to compare that whether this E1 and E2 are equal or not. Now if you just compare using this one, E1 dot equals E2, it means it just compare the value, it just compare the reference, that whether they are referring to same objects or not. So like what happens if you run the program here, so what will happen, first of all it will operate this one. So for this one it will return true, and now here you are saying check if E1 dot equals E2. So in this case it is returning false because they are different object. But let's say if it was E1, so what would happen, then you run the program and then you can see now it is returning true, right? So this is the way, so this is the default thing. But let's say if I want to implement according to my functionality, because this is equals, this is just checking that whether the reference are equal or not, but we don't want to check only the reference, we want to check the actual values. Like we want to check whether these name, age and salary, if all are matching. Or let's say if I say okay, equals means if name and age are matching, then the both employee are equals. So how we can do that? So in this case we need to override this equals, right? So what I do, if you go here, so basically here this employee class should override the equals. So like here we have override this equals method. So now what happens if you see, so this is how we have override the equals. So what will happen, that now when it will call this E1 dot equals E2, then it will call the equals of this one, right? So how we are checking, first of all we are checking that let's say if they are same object, this is a default implementation. Like if it is same object, like let's say if this equals to object, then we can simply return true, because if we are just checking with the same object means, let's say if you are checking if E1 dot equals E1, so in this case both are same, it means this. So basically here this represents the value which is calling. So here this is representing this value E1, and dot equals E2, so this object is representing the E2 here, right? So we are checking that if this equals to object, then we can return true. But let's say if this object is null, and if this object is null, then we can return false, because if E1 will be there and E2 is false, then it means there is no, this is not equal. Or what can happen, that let's say if their classes are different. Classes means, let's say if this dot class is employee class, and let's say if we have object of some other class, let's say if there is another class, or let's say string class, and you are comparing with employee with the string, then also it is not case, right? So we basically check that if their classes, if the type of class is different, then also we can say that this is not a same object, right? So these are the two things that we need to check. Now what we do, if you see here, we are basically getting the object. But now what is the object we have here? This object is of employee type. So what we do, so here basically we do the typecasting. So when we do this employee, so here we'll get the employee object name, right? Now I check that on which value I want to actually check. Now first of all I want to check whether their names are equal or not. So I'm saying that this dot names dot equals employee dot name. Now if you observe one thing here, that here our string, because name is a string and string is a object, so that is why here we are checking with the equals. We are not checking with the equals, equal, because if we are just checking with the equal, then we are checking actually the reference. But here our aim is to check the values. So that is why we are saying names dot equals employee dot name. And because this equal basically in string, we have override this equal, which actually check the values, right? So now it is checking with the names and it is checking in the age. It means if any two objects have the name and age are equal, then these two objects will be equal, otherwise they will be false. So like if you see in this case what will happen, that here I am comparing E1 and E2. Now if you see the E1, for E1 we have the Sachin 45 and for E2 we have Sachin 45. So in this case it will be equal. Why it will be equal? Because age and names are same. So if you run the program here, you can see it is returning true, right? But let's say if in next case what happen, now we also added this case, now with the name and age, their salary should also be same, right? So you also put a condition here that your salary should also be same. Now what will happen? Now if you see here, so now it has 45, 35,000, 50,000. Now their salary are not same. So if you run the program now, so in this case it will return false, right? Because the salary was not same. So now let me comment this one because this is primitive, right? So what you can see now, let's say if you again make this salary as equal, now if you see exactly all values are same. So if you run the program now your E1 and E2 are same. So in this case it will return true, right? So this is a case, this is how we can check the two objects. So what we did, we basically override the equals method, and this equals method are basically of the object, right? This is the object class, means each class have this equals method. So that is why we are saying that we are overriding, because object class has equals method, so it means we are overriding, and every class overrides the object class because object class is super class. So it means that is why we are saying we are overriding the equals method. So what happened, that when we override the equals method, then it basically checking based on the value that we are assigning here. Now what happens, now we have a concept here of the hashCode. So hashCode says that before checking, so if you observe here, we are checking with each and every value. So it says that rather than comparing every values of the object, you should have some quick way of checking that whether these values are equal or not. So basically that value we call as hashCode. So it says for every object you should have a hashCode, and based on that you can check that if their hashCode is not same, then it means the object is not same. And if their hashCode is same, then we can further check that their equality, right? So basically what happens, so here we have the concept of this hashCode. So what it does, that before checking the equality, first of all we'll check that whether their hashCode is same or not. And if their hashCode is different, so we will not check further, because if their hashCode is different, it means there is no point to check the equality. Like in this case, I have put my hashCode as this name length remainder by 10. Means whatever the name length we have, just remainder by 10, and then whatever the length will be, then I will check the hashCode. And if their hashCode is different, it means I can outrightly say that the value are not matching. And if their hash code is same, then I should check further equality, right? So what will happen? So for that, what we do, let's check with the E1 and E3 object. And now first we are checking the hash code, that if their hash code is not same, like here, if this is for equality, let's say if their hash code is not same, so we are just saying that they are not equals. We can outrightly say that they are not equals. But if their hash code is equal, then only I will go in the equality. So what will happen, that if I basically debug this program, so if you see here for E1 the length of this name is 6 because it is Sachin, so name length is 6. So hash code of this will be 6 remainder by 10 6, and the hash code of this Dhoni, it will be 5 because the length is 5, so 5 remainder by 10 is 5. So in this case what will happen, that it will give the hash code, and then the hash code of these values are not same, so we can directly say that they are not equal, right? But let's say if their hash code is equal, so let's say I add one more I. So now in this case both are of the 6 length, so it means their hash code will be same. So what will happen, if I debug this program again, now their hash code is same. So it means if their hash code is same, then it will again go further. So now if you run the program, then you can see that in this case their hash code is same, right? So if their hash code is same, then I will go to in the equals, and now I will check each and every value, that whether the values are matching or not, right? So now it will check with the name, salary and age. So in this case you can say that we have returned false because only their hash code was same but not their values, because here also their age is different, their salary is also different. So in this case it has returned false, right? So the why we have added the hash code is added so that we can do the we can check the quick equality. So you can see that when there was no hash code, then also it was working fine, it was not giving error. But when you added the hash code, so hash code is an extra check so that we can basically check the equality in better way, because now it need not to check equality for every values. From here itself we can check that if their hash code is not same, it means there is no point to check further. So you should check only equality if their hash code is same, right? So ideal way is that whenever you are implementing the equals, always implement the hash code so that you can check the better equality, or you can do the equality in better way, right? Now the point is that you can see that we also have in Java hash set and map, hash map, tree set, tree map. So whenever you talk about the set and map, what happens, that they basically have the unique value, right? They always store the unique value. So let's say I have an integer type array, and now one by one I am adding the values. So whenever you are adding any value, it basically check first of all that whether this value already exists in the set or not. And if this already exists in the set or map, so it doesn't add this again, right? So this was, so in the, if you are adding the primitive value, it can check based on the value. But if you are adding the objects in the set or map, so how it will check? So it will again check based on the equality, right? So whenever you are adding object into set or map, then you should override the equal and hash code mapper. So what will happen if you see here, that here we have the set of the employee. It means in this set I am basically adding all the employee object. And now whenever I am adding any object here, so first of all it checks the hash code, and if it finds the hash code, and if it doesn't find the hash code in the set or map, so it says okay, this is new value, so it doesn't check the equality. But if the hash code is same, then it will check with the equal, and it will check that if all the values are equals, it means this value is already added, so you need not to add it again, right? So if you see in this case, like here E1 and E2, now for E1 and E2 all the values are same. So what will happen, now we are running the program. So whenever you are adding this E1, so first of all it checks the hash code. Now it says this hash code is not in the set, it means this is new value, so it won't check equality. But when you are adding E2, so this hash code is same because this hash code is already appeared. Now it will check with all the values that whether the values are same or not. So in this case for E1 and E2 all the values are same. So what will happen, you can see in the set it has added only one value, right? So but now let's say if rather than E1 and E2, now you are adding E1 and E3. Now you can see that the hash code for E3 For E3 hashcode is same, but values are not same. So what will happen? Now let me debug the code again. So now what should happen? That you will see. So this is the, now we have created the set. Now we have adding that. So first of all it will check. So because it is the first time, so hashcode is different. So it means it will add the value. Now when you are adding E3, first of all it will go to hashcode. Now hashcode is same. So then it will go to equals, and then it will check that whether the values are same. So it will say, now check here. Now because their values are different, so it means it says that these are different objects. So it means add both the objects in the set, right? So it means that whenever you are adding objects into set or map or all the classes which implements this set and map, then also if you are adding the object, then you should override the equals and hashcode, right? So equals and hashcodes are very important when you are comparing the objects using the simple equal, or you are adding this object into set or map and all that thing, right? So that's it guys, that's all about this video. If you have any doubts, then please write in the comment section. I will try to explain that, and I will also put the source code into description section, so if you want, then you can also get it from there. So that's it, and if you have liked the video, then please like it and subscribe the channel for more such videos. Thank you.